This episode is brought to you by Commerce, parent company of Big Commerce, Feedonomics, and MakeSwift.
We want to build community and at the intersection of fashion, music, art, and sports. And I think it's created something that's very intentional in terms of the partnerships we develop, the product stories we try to tell. We want to bring people together. And I think today's customer, especially since we say we want to do it through co-creation, meaning bring them into the process, have them help us create some of our product stories, have them give us more direct intel and feedback, and us responding to them directly. I think it's built more of an affinity.
Welcome to Retail Remix. As you may have noticed, legacy brands from the Y2K era are making a big comeback, not by simply repackaging, but by reinventing themselves for a digital native generation that is pining for a non-digital era. One of the leaders of this pack of brands winning over a new generation of teens is Pacsun, and today we're sitting down with the company's Chief Merchandising Officer, Richard Cox. Not only are we going to get him to spill his secrets for connecting with Gen Z and Gen Alpha, but we're also going to hear about the company's new Youth Council initiative, which gives Pacsun's customers a seat at the table. Grab your bucket hat and lace up your platforms because we're going on a ride down memory lane that leads straight to the future. Welcome back to Retail Remix. As always, I'm your host, Nicole Silberstein, Editor-in-Chief of Retail Touchpoints. And today we are lucky to have with us Rich Cox, Chief Merchandising Officer of Pacsun. Thanks for being here today, Rich.
Thanks for having me. Excited.
Okay, now I did some rough math, and unless you're one of those like boy geniuses who went to college at 12, I think we're pretty close to the same age, which would also make you like a 90s or a Y2K teen. Is that right?
90s teen, late 90s, yeah.
Yeah, okay, me too. So tell me what it's like to have spent the bulk of your career now working for a company that was so popular in your youth. Does your teenage experience of the brand at all inform how you connect now with today's teens, or is it just totally different?
Yeah, it definitely informs it. But I would say just youth in general, my entire youth, and the different brands that I did shop at that time also inform it. There's just this nostalgia, right? And there's this feeling of fandom that I remember having as a youth. And I remember wanting to connect with a brand and just being really inspired by product and the stories that were being told. That was really a big thing for me, especially I come from humble beginnings, so you couldn't really always buy what you saw. But I remember that feeling of aspiring to, one day I want that graphic t-shirt. That's what I remember Pacsun for, was graphics for sure. And I was a sneakerhead, so, just always wanting whatever the newest shoe was. Is there any way for me to make that possible? So just that passion, I remember that. And so it's special to be part of the company now and to be trying to put those stories together and inspire young people to want to get after that from a product perspective and wish that they can secure a purchase like that. I think the other thing that is really special to me is just the responsibility that it comes with. It's not just about the product now. And I don't know if this hit me over the head when I was younger, but I think some of the passion that I had when I was shopping was also just a feeling that different brands were able to, evoke in me. And I think it had to do with me wanting to find a sense of belonging and finding some of that belonging within their brand. So now I'm on the other side and I get to help kind of create those stories and try to help create some of that belonging in that community. So it's a responsibility, but it's also just really special to be able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, when you put it that way, it's actually a really big responsibility, but one that does sound really fun. So you all just released your first youth survey, which had some really interesting insights into today's teenagers and young adults. Tell us a little bit about the study. What did you learn about this generation? How does it differ from our generation? And how are you then leveraging that knowledge to kind of take on that responsibility that you mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start off with just Pacsun's mission statement, which is to inspire the youth to create a better world. And we want to do that by building community at the intersection of what we call the four pillars of culture that are really important to our customer. And those four pillars are fashion, music, art, and sports. And so when we take a step back from that and wanting to inspire the youth, it's important to us that we are experts on the youth and we are also just community builders with the youth. And they're a part of our ecosystem and we bring them into our process and that we are co-creating with them. So based on all of that and based on us always craving more insight on them, we decided to create a youth survey to find more intel out on this generation. And this generation meaning Gen Z, who's our core customer, but also Gen Alpha, who is quickly following them up, right? And so that was the impetus for wanting to create a survey. We didn't necessarily ask questions about us or our brand in particular. We wanted to dive deeper into what motivates them, what motivates this consumer, and how do we get into their head a bit more. So that was the reason why we created one. So we partnered with Global Data and Neil Saunders and his team. The survey was polling around 6,000 students across, or young people across the country from Gen Z and Gen Alpha. We were really excited in early summer to get the results back. And we spent most of the summer with Neil's team analyzing the data and trying to come up with some really big, good, thoughtful takeaways that can be applied not only in our business, but that we publish this thing. And we want people within our industry and people outside of our industry to also have access to this, because there's good takeaways for them too. I can dive into those takeaways, but some of the biggest ones so far, some of it surprised us, but some of it also validated at least some of the efforts on our end. Mental health was one of the biggest things that came out. We asked a question around what was most important to young people in terms of intrinsically or internally to them. So not an external factor, but more of an internal factor. And one of the most important things to them is mental health. It outranked even physical health and academics and individual success. It outranked so many things by quite a bit. So just the importance of mental health was one of the biggest takeaways, and us needing to think about that in everything that we do. I think it was a validation point for us there, because we know we've done some good work, we think, and more to come there, more to do there. But we partner with Rare Impact Fund, and we have a denim line with the Rare Impact Fund and Selena Gomez's team. And that obviously supports all the work that she does with the Rare Impact Fund, supports mental health. And so internally, we were really happy to see that mental health was important, that maybe that partnership is just as important as we thought it would be, because we're doing our part there. So that was one of the big takeaways. I think the second big takeaway, which, as a fashion company, I would say it wasn't extremely surprising, but, it made us sit and think for a bit, was music and the importance of music. So we found that music is super central to their identity, even compared to other things like fashion is important, right? Sports are important, but music outranked the others. And just the power of music in terms of building not only their identity, but helping them with their mental health too. So when they need a moment to feel better, it seems like they keep going back to music. So that was a big takeaway as well. And we've definitely this year ramped up our efforts from a music standpoint, trying to meet them where they are at music festivals, having partnerships from a music perspective. But to see that result, it does mean we need to continue to try to ramp those efforts up. So that was a big surprise. And then the third one that really stands out is, I think we're seeing this right now because there's a lot of nostalgia plays out there and a lot of things that we've seen, especially you talked about the generation you and I come from, things that we probably embraced back during our time are coming back in a big way, especially early 2000s. And the question always is why? And there's this, I guess the term is anemoia. It's that feeling of nostalgia for an era you never really lived in or got a chance to participate in. There's a feeling there in terms of anemoia, and it's big to them. And so that answered our question as far as why is the early 2000s so important? Why is all this fashion coming back? You see the Von Dutches and Ed Hardy's of the world coming back, and True Religion jeans, and just those moments that bootcut jeans are starting to come back, and baggy denim, crop tops, and just that look. I want to say the Paris Hilton as a muse. So that helps answer some of that, right, in terms of the anemoia. So that was a really big ticket.
I love that, especially because I learned a new word. So I guess what would it be for our generation though? Like the 70s? I guess I could see that.
I was talking to someone yesterday and I was saying, hey, because is it a new thing? Is it a completely new thing, or is it just amplified? And I don't think it's a completely new thing. I think for us, it's definitely would have to be anytime there was a reference to 70s, but even a little bit of 80s. I was too young to really know what I was doing back then. I maybe see a photo of me as a young kid, maybe wearing something from the 80s, but I wasn't participating in that culture. That was my parents dressing me in that. So whenever we have a reference to the 80s, I feel like it's definitely that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that nostalgia factor and just kind of how hot the Y2K era is among teens right now, which you've helped to explain a little bit. It goes part of the way in explaining Pacsun's really explosive popularity in the last few years. Is there anything else that you credit this resurgence to beyond just cyclical fashion trends and, trend in general?
Yeah, I actually don't think our resurgence has anything to do with nostalgia.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I think a lot of our customers don't really have a good reference point to what we used to be, because we've made quite a transition over the years in terms of who we are, the brands we carry, the partnerships we have, and our mission statement. So there is still going to be that heritage. We are California-based brand, LA lifestyle for sure, skate roots for sure. But when you take a step back and look at what we stand for as Pacsun and what we represent, the commonality, I guess, from years ago would be just youth and youth culture. But the way we get there and we become a much more purpose-driven brand makes us a bit unique from back then. So, we have partnerships with Formula One Racing, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. We have our own brand in our stores and it says Pacsun on it. These are things that just didn't exist back in the day, and our brand makes us quite a bit different. And so I think we've actually just built a new fandom with younger people over the years. It's been a labor of love and a transition over the last 10 years and really amplified over the last 5. Where we're much more fashion and trend focused when it comes to a fashion perspective, and we're much more collaborative with other brands and other companies. I think we look quite a bit different from back in the day, and they don't really have that reference point, to the point where I think some customers actually mispronounce our name. And we've actually had fun on TikTok where we've seen customers do it, and then we embraced it. Those memes where it's, I was today years old when I found out. So there was a moment where it was flying around there. I was today years old when I found out Pacsun stood for Pacific Sunwear, because some customers actually call it Pacsun. Like they think it's one word.
Pacsun. Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. But the real through line then between the Pacsun of yore, that is our day, and the Pacsun now is really just like a really tuned in connection with youth, right? Because that felt true for me as a teen, and it feels very true now.
Definitely that through line with youth. I think we're just sharpening to that focus. And I think today's youth require a bit more than just that. You can't just say you want to connect with youth. They tend to associate themselves with brands that have a bit more purpose behind them. I think we're much more a purpose-driven company. Like I said earlier, our purpose is to inspire, right? And how do we do that? We want to build community and at the intersection of fashion, music, art, and sports. And I think it's created something that's very intentional in terms of the partnerships we develop, the product stories we try to tell. We want to bring people together. And I think today's customer, especially since we say we want to do it through co-creation, meaning bring them into the process, have them help us create some of our product stories, have them give us more direct intel and feedback, and us responding to them directly. I think it's built more of an affinity. So I don't think they see it as a nostalgia play. I think they see it as I'm a fan of this brand today. I don't even know what they used to do, but I know what they do now.
Okay, there's so many directions to go from everything that you just said, and I'm going to try to get to all of them. But let's start first with something that you mentioned a while back, which is all these on-the-ground activations that you all have been doing. It's been really noticeable to me. You've got pop-ups at festivals and other culture events. You have your college tailgate tour this fall. It feels like really the epitome of going to your customers instead of having them come to you. So tell me a little bit more about the strategy behind these like IRL activations and what the goal is beyond sales. Of course, sales are always part of the goal.
Yeah, it's all about that building community. And so we want to meet the customer where they are. And that's what we always say. And we intentionally chose music festivals as one of the methods this year, because music is one of our 4 pillars. We felt like we were doing a fantastic job of meeting sports with F1 partnerships and LAFC partnerships. And we're partners with the LA Rams, and we do a lot in the sports world. We know we do a lot in fashion. We do a good amount in art as well. But when we took a hard look at ourselves last year, says we're not really nailing music. And so we're not really meeting our purpose. Next year, we've got to meet the customer in music somewhere. And we thought festivals would be a great place to do so. So we started with Rolling Loud in March. Then we moved over to Gov Ball during the summer and wrapped up with Outside Lands, and went on a bit of a festival tour. Also did an roadside activation out during Coachella weekend, and they were all big hits. We could tell that was the right strategy to do that, and we want to continue to build on that. Now, when it comes to the college tour, we know back to school is an important time frame, not just for retail, but just for our customer in general. And we have a lot of, based on our demo, college in particular is a key part of our demo, and it's important when they get back on campus. And so we ended up seeding product to a lot of incoming college freshmen. And we've gotten some content back on that and really tried to help tell that story. And then from a sports standpoint, we have been doing a tailgate tour. Basically, we've partnered with the tailgate tour sponsored by Fox. And we've already popped up at 2 key college football games and had a little pop-up with product and activation so that we can, kind of connect with our customer there. And we'll continue that. We're going to be showing up at a few more games throughout the college football season.
Yeah, it strikes me like the choice of where you're showing up also is probably a really big statement to your customers. It's just like, we get you, we know what you love, and we love it too, and we're here with you. It's a kind of just a really cool brand statement to your customers at these events where they're there for fun and connection.
Yeah, and we're here. So remember when you were having fun in these moments? We were here. We were trying to participate with you. Come have fun with us.
You've talked about co-creation a ton. And so I do want to hear a little bit more because you just launched the Pacsun Youth Advisory Council and you had a summit to kick it all off. Tell us a little bit more about that initiative, because my understanding is that co-creation is a big part of it and what your hope is for this group.
So before we get to any of that, we started with the collective. We call it the Pacsun Collective. The first time we ever did it was, I want to say it was one of our spring campaigns. We basically tapped our entire network, our social feed, and asked for our customers to reach out, apply. We're looking for a photographer, a stylist, a content creator, and anyone who wants to model and be part of our campaign. And so that was the first time we ever did it. And yeah, we ended up identifying people to fill those roles and participate in the campaign with us. And that was our first attempt at bringing them into the process. The campaign was really well received. We also did a holiday campaign where we didn't really hire model talent for it. We used customers and shot them for our holiday campaign. And that also was really well received. So that was our first, call it, example of trying to bring them into the process. I think not bringing it to today, we wanted to have our summit because we wanted to not only reveal the youth report that we created, but we also wanted to bring our partners in, show them what we mean by co-creation, and also bring in some of the people within our, especially young people within our network, that we are currently co-creating with. So it was a great day filled with not only Neil Saunders giving feedback or revealing the info that we found out and the big takeaways in the report, but we also had a few panels. And our CEO, Brie Olson, she also spoke at this event. But one of our biggest panels would have been with one of our content creators, Lila Biggs, because we had this huge viral moment on TikTok a couple of years ago for one of our jeans. You may have heard of it. It's our Casey low-rise baggy Astra jean. It went really viral on TikTok. So we had a panel discussion with Lila because she's the creator who helped really set that off. So the audience got to hear from her and how she feels about co-creating with us and just how that moment started. I was on that panel with her. And so we got to discuss that viral moment. And then we had a panel discussion with some of our key brand partners and purpose work and how that's important to them and how co-creation is important to them. So we had Rich Orozco from LAFC, and we had Gavin Matthew, who's the founder and creative director for the brand Supervision. And we also had representation from the Orange County Museum of Art, Heidi Zeckerman. And then one of our final panels, which was really special, was when we introduced our new Pacsun Youth Advisory Council, which you basically tapped a group of young people from Gen Z and also from Gen Alpha and we want to hear more, especially after getting the feedback from this youth report. We would crave that, even though we're going to release that annually, we'd crave that feedback more often throughout the year. So we decided to create a youth advisory council, introduce them at the summit, and then held a panel discussion with a group of them and asked them a ton of questions. And I think that was probably the best panel of the day. And everyone's really excited to hear from the youth directly.
I bet they all had a ton of questions for them too.
Yeah, it was a long discussion. And to see them, the energy amongst them all and building on each other's answers, it was incredible. I can tell that was the most engaging part of the day. And it just shows that we're going to get a lot from them because as being members of the council, one of the goals is they're going to actually just tap in with our executive team throughout the year for key feedback, things we should be doing, helping guide us, helping guide the company. And so that's co-creating.
Yeah. I've heard this multiple times now that co-creation is really important to these younger generations of consumers that, in the world of social media and Roblox and other things like this, they've just really come to expect that from the brands that they love. It always strikes me as nerve-wracking though. I mean, relinquishing a little bit of the control of your brand to people who haven't been vetted and hired. And do you ever I guess what I'm wondering is, first of all, does this co-creation extend beyond marketing content into product design? And second, how do you balance it with the expertise, the professional expertise? How do you bring those two together?
Yeah, from a product standpoint, that's the goal, to get to that point. We do a little bit of it now. We do bring in some people within our network. We have a Pack Artist Network, which we consider that co-creation as well, where we'll tap up and coming artists and create product collections with them. So we've done 3 or 4 of those to date. So that's one example of, tapping others outside of our network to help co-create product. We're always also, at least from a product standpoint, bringing in focus groups. So we'll be working on a season. We need to bring in young people to help give us tips, advice. Do you like this? Do you not? What else would you want for this season? So we definitely have focus groups that we bring in and help with that. But I think the goal is to ramp that up even more. That's what I would say from a product perspective. And then from a marketing perspective, it is a question mark that I could see companies having, but it's not a huge one for us. And that was actually one of the big takeaways from our summit yesterday. It was actually in the discussion I was part of, which was, hey, us as companies, we're always so hyper-focused on highly produced content, wanting things to be perfect. And we're really terrified on if we don't have that ultimate control. My message to you, and we are learning that it is beneficial to relinquish some of that control because they do a better job of it. They know what they like. These customers, they know that raw, authentic content and storytelling is just way more impactful to them and believable to them. They want to see themselves in whatever stories or messages you're telling. And our number one example was that Lila Big story. We did not tap Lila to do that. We didn't ask her to post on that jean. And she said she went to our store, bought that jean, thought it fit well. She had just gotten on TikTok, just hit 5,000 followers. And that made her eligible to be able to link to the product through their shop. And so she said she just gave it a shot because she thought the jeans looked good and got a ton of positive feedback and engagement. And so then the virality started to ramp up. And we sold 11,000 pairs in 48 hours over Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
Wow.
We would not have tapped Lila to do that, or we would have we were already trying to push that gene. If you need an example, that's the example of relinquishing some of the control.
Yeah. I mean, clearly you're very deeply connected with your consumer base, but culture and trends, especially now on TikTok, they're such fast moving targets. How else are you kind of keeping your finger on the pulse of what matters to your customers?
Yeah, social listening for sure. So TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, our team definitely pays attention. Anything we post, we get comments, we get likes. So definitely not just posting and moving on. We pay attention to the comments. We try to take that into account. We pay attention to what they don't comment on, which means it didn't matter to them. So social listening first and foremost. I do think those focus groups are helpful. I like to think us showing up where they are, meaning those events that we show up to, whether it be the tailgate tour or the festivals. When you get to engage with them in person, you get to have conversations with them. And so you learn a lot more there. And then I have to shout out my team. I like to think we have a great team who stays tapped in. So we can't ignore that too.
I mean, the proof is in the pudding as far as the team goes. You guys really are the poster child for really connecting and engaging Gen Z, which is something that many, many brands are looking to do today. What advice do you have for other brands who maybe aren't quite there yet with this consumer set in the way that you are?
One, you have to relinquish some of the control. You do. You have to bring them into the process. I think co-creation matters. I think, like we've been talking about, the youth, especially now, Gen Z and Alpha, they want companies that stand for something and have a true purpose. So if you have not ironed that out as a company, you probably need to do that purpose work and figure out what your purpose is outside of just generating revenue. So I'd say those two for sure. And then also, I think you've got to be ready to be nimble. We pivot very quickly. We like to say we're really scrappy as a company. We test and react. We don't necessarily feel like we have to wait until something is beating us over the head and it's perfect and a for sure win. We like to get out ahead of new ideas and new trends and get the feedback and move accordingly. And I think a lot of companies move too slow because they're nervous. And so those are probably my top recommendations.
Good ones. Good ones. Well, since we talk so much about music, we do like to wrap up our episodes with our Mixtape rapid fire segment. So if you're ready for it, we have a few just kind of fun, fast questions for you now. Okay. You ready?
Yep. Let's do it.
Okay. First one. This should be easy. The absolute most fun part of your job.
Oh, telling stories, especially creating new stories with collaborators.
What is a fashion trend that we're going to be seeing everywhere this winter?
Denim is everywhere, and denim is going to continue to be everywhere going into winter. So it's got to be that. And baggy jeans are still the number one. But I think this winter, you're going to see boot cut or flare really start to ramp up here.
Oh, yeah. Now we're really getting back into 90s style, man. A brand that you are constantly inspired by. Could be any kind of brand.
Oh, no, I'll give two. Okay, I got to give you two. from a product and storytelling perspective, ALD, Amy Leondor. Like, I just love it. They do great, incredible product and great storytelling based out of New York. Love that brand. And then in terms of a brand that means something, that stands for something, I got to go with Rare Beauty. So everything about the brand and what Selena and her team does, it's fantastic. It's really well thought through and it means something. And having the mental health aspect to it, I think is really impressive.
Yeah. What is your go-to tactic when you need to kickstart your creativity?
Get outside. I love getting outside, whether it's just taking a walk or just getting active. So I can tell when I'm in a rut, I need to go play basketball. Not that I could do that in the middle of the day, but if it's like one of those weeks, I would love to play some basketball. And then music is great too.
Yeah, music is always a go-to. Last one is, if you could trade jobs with anyone for one day, who would it be and why?
This one's a hard one because I don't want to pick something in fashion.
Yeah, because you already have a cool job in fashion.
I do. And I don't want to put out there that there's some other job in fashion that I want. So outside of fashion, I got it. Adam Silver. So sports. Adam Silver, commissioner of the NBA. Because sports brings people together. And when you think about, tapping multiple pillars of culture, it's sports, right? But the NBA is so involved in everything. They're involved in fashion. They're involved in music. Art isn't a critical part. Like, it's everything that I love, except it's just through a sports lens. And having that responsibility of wrangling in all these teams, like, that's a dream job.
Yeah. You don't aim low, though. That's a hard job, too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's it for this episode. Thank you, Rich, for being here and bringing a little bit of 90s style to our 2025 season. And thanks to all of you for joining us. Don't forget to join the conversation with us on LinkedIn and on the Retail Touchpoints page. We'd love to hear your Pacsun stories, past or present, and even better, see some of your 90s fashion. Thanks for listening in. Talk to you all soon. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Retail Remix. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or your favorite podcast app. Until next time, keep mixing it up.